Okay, welcome to part 3 of our DNA sessions. And we are continuing on, what was it, chapter 4 today? And then,
Autosomal.
autosomal, but we're also getting into chapter 8, which is those third-party tools. Linda, I've given you a co-host capability so you can share your
Okay.
screen at any time. As far as once we get into GEDmatch, probably the only thing I'll want to do a little bit is the heritage stuff, the admixture heritage, just going through some of those just to show you how to do that, how extensive it is really, that you could sit and play with this tool for a long time. And it's fun, just to see what these different groups are doing as they study various aspects of DNA. So everybody here is, I believe, well, Deborah may not be. I'm not. My memory's not quite there. If Deborah is new for this for today, I'm Sherry Daniels. I'm head of Library and Archives. And then Linda, you want to introduce yourself and carry right along if you'd like to.
I'm Linda Colston, and basically I work here as a library tech and a genealogist and like to play with the DNA. Don't have a lot of time for it, but I enjoy playing with the DNA. What I'd like to do to get started is let's just kind of backtrack a little bit and get on autosomal DNA. And did you guys get to read the chapters and see the videos and the article and stuff?
Yep.
Okay. Cooking and eating lunch, and we'll open my video in a bit. Enjoy your lunch. Don't let us interrupt you unless it's something really good. Then we can, our mouths can water with you. Any questions, general questions on just the autosomal DNA before we start talking about matches? You all know all about it, right?
We're not smart enough to ask questions.
No, you haven't got, if you hadn't come in ready, I can understand not having thought of any just yet. Have to start thinking about what we're doing. Had you looked at matches to see if you could find one that you were interested in pursuing? That was the assignment last time, remember? Joyce, you're muted.
I found one, and now I'm trying to remember who it was. It was on my heritage, and I didn't write it down. Sorry, I'll have to go back and find her.
That's okay. How many of you have worked with with matches? Any?
I found a long lost first cousin through Ancestry, and that was neat because my sister and I had been looking for him and his family for years. He had moved away, and we'd lost touch.
With DNA? With DNA?
Yeah, and he also had posted his family on there, and I recognized the ones that were still living, and I knew it was probably him, but I wasn't sure. It's actually the son who had posted on there.
Okay.
And I found one that I didn't know that's pretty close. There was one of my heritages doesn't have a family tree, and I was going to work on that one to see. And I didn't write her name down. I'll have to go back and find her again.
That's fine.
I figured I'd learn the process with you guys today, and then I'd go back and find her again and see if it worked.
Okay. Kathy.
My status is, I'm proud to report, as of this morning, I have my twin sister and I have both our DNA downloaded. I won't even go into it, but this is a happy day for me. My husband finally found it. So anyway, we got it downloaded, so we have them both and they're stored. But I've been quite successful with Ancestry, just because people put their trees on it. So I found, and I reached out to people, third cousins, and I've been very successful. And I am related to them, and they've responded back, and I've been very successful. It's the ones that don't have trees that are the ones that I have I don't know exactly how to, there is one that has, that looks promising, but I don't even know what side of the family are. I color coded all my grandparents and all the down the line. So anything that has a tree is color coded. But those that don't have trees, I don't know where I'm linked to them at all.
Okay. We'll look at that. What about you, Michael?
Well, like I said, I think in our first session, my relatives are all hiding somewhere. I'm on Ancestry. So you've got the matches and you can go in and I mean, it starts from the top with the most centimorgans and it just goes downhill from there, right? And I've identified I identified one that had a fair amount. If it's only 6 centimorgans, I don't even reach out to them. But
Right.
if I'm looking at 80, 100, 120, then I try to look into it. And it's like I said, if they don't have a tree, it's kind of hard to do anything. But I found one and I reached out to her and we tried to determine, in a couple of emails how we were related. But the fact that most of hers were down in Kentucky, that's where my dad's family's from. So I kind of thought that that's the side of the family that we were on. But a couple of emails, talking back and then she quit, just quit talking to me.
Well, sometimes life gets in the way.
Yeah, subsequent to that, I found 2 more matches that were the same name, but a lot less centimorgans. So I was thinking that maybe those 2 were probably, cousins of hers. But like I said, the conversation just came to an end, and that's kind of the way it's been with that part of my family. The ones that respond, I get a couple of emails, and then it just kind of dies.
Okay, well, we're going to walk through a couple of examples that don't necessarily involve contacting for those that don't respond in a way. What about you, Deborah? Oh, hi, Nicole.
What was the question? If I found any matches? Yeah,
Identified.
I did Ancestry back several years ago and have been working on my tree with that, and have been away from it for a while. And my son this year submitted his DNA to 23andMe and had a result of a first cousin that was totally unknown to me. And I said, I think I know all your first cousins and I don't know this person. So I submitted my DNA to 23andMe and turned out she is my half sister. And
Whoa.
I identified my biological father for the first time. But we did communicate some, but she is not wanting to acknowledge the relationship. So I decided I wanted to learn more about DNA so I can learn more about that part of my family. Right.
Yeah, we always have to respect the other people, what they want, what they don't want, stuff like that. It's just, you've got to think about if you were in their shoes or what things you would not want to know or not want to share or not be ready to.
Exactly.
For things. Welcome, Nicole. Have you found and worked with any matches? We'll put her on the spot since we can't see her.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm in the desert. Okay. I can hear you.
Great. So the question is about matches.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, I was a little late.
That's all right. We're just kind of looking if you have any questions and if you've been successful in finding matches.
I had my husband test, and when he tested, we found his mom had like 3 half siblings she didn't know about. We actually saw one of them yesterday. He's very nice.
Cool.
So we found his uncle. The trouble I'm having is actually with Y-DNA. I was able to locate, long story short, their birth father was adopted. So we started looking into his history. We found his birth mother through records and DNA, but the Y-DNA is beyond us.
Right.
There are 2 surnames that popped up with the Y-DNA, and we don't know how to determine who the birth father was of their shared grandfather. So
That we'll probably discuss that more when we do Y-DNA next time. But basically, since it's such a close generation, we're talking parents and grandparents, you're better off going through autosomal DNA
Okay.
because Y-DNA could be 100 years back, could be 500 years back. There's just no telling. And there's going to be, obviously, there's a break, like a lot of us have, and we're not sure what that break is. But it may be so far back that, too hard to find, no documentation available for that. Autosomal DNA is focusing on like the first 4, 5, possibly 6 generations. So if it's within that, you want to go through the autosomal DNA. Because
That's easier.
yeah, because you're going to find cousins and stuff on both sides of the family. And let's see, you said it was your husband or your husband's dad?
It was my husband who tested first, and then we tested his mother, and it was her father that was adopted. And he's
Okay.
obviously since passed. But he had 3 families, we'll just put it that way.
Yeah.
And we ran into that problem.
Right. And see, she would have inherited an X from her father.
Right.
So there is a small group there that's going to be from the paternal side that's going to be able to be worked with.
Yeah. Her
on it.
half brother that we found, he was so sweet, and he did take the Y-DNA test for me, but I can't use it.
Yeah. It's good that he took that, and maybe you might want to get him to see if he'll do the autosomal test.
Yeah.
Just to kind of put that in with it, because then that way you'll get a better picture of those who match both of you.
Yeah.
Okay. Has anybody not fooled with Ancestry at all? Nobody? Good. So y'all are kind of familiar with Ancestry. And the reason I'm asking is Ancestry in some ways for me gives easier visuals that if you want to get the concepts down that you can apply to the other companies. Whatever company you're with and you're working with at the time, you want to get familiar with their parameters. How many centimorgans are they? Is there minimum? What do they include? What do they exclude? And we've kind of talked about that a little bit in the beginning. I'm going to bring up my Ancestry, and I want y'all to raise your right hand and promise you're not going to give away any information. Ideally, though, you probably can't tell because one of my matches is the same name as my sister-in-law, but not related at all. So, but I want to do that, and I want to kind of show you. You want to analyze what is already there at first as much as you can. Get all the clues that you can. And Ancestry is kind of good for doing that. So are the other companies in their own way. But the more familiar you get with the company, the easier it is to work with things. So I'm going to share. Let me find the Ancestry one. I got something on GEDmatch that I want to share with y'all too a little later. Okay, have you got it now? Whoops.
Not on the screen.
Oh,
There it
you
is.
go.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. Now, you can see the first one is my brother.
Mhm.
So I kind of already knew who he was. When you start working with matches, especially at the very beginning, you want to start as, who was it that said that, from the top down? You want to identify those that are, all of them you can identify as far as you down as you can identify at first, especially first cousins, second cousins, and third cousins. Okay, because that's going to give you more people to consider as you're working your way down through some of the matches. I take advantage of these at the top quite a bit. You can search by common ancestors for whoever you're looking at. And of course, all of these are my common ancestors. But if I had a particular one up, I could show common ancestors. You can message them. You can make notes on what you want to do. You can look at trees, identify private or public trees. But I get into, you can narrow it down by close matches, distant matches, or custom centimorgan, if you're actually going to work with the centimorgans. But what I'm showing you here is without having to look at the segments a whole lot, okay? How many of you use groups? Does anybody use the groups? I like the groups because if you've noticed, I have got different color dots down on my list. And what I did was I took 8 of the grandparents' names and I gave them each a color. Okay. So that when I look at a match, go down here further. So let's find the, all right, let's go to unviewed matches. Once you view them, they move them over into the, so there, oh, we're setting it. Even some of these I do have identified as matches with different things, and I put them in different groups with the notes. Joyce, this match is a second cousin once removed. Okay. This over here, do you recognize them? That's relatively new. I'm not sure I'm a fan of it, other than when you get up here, you could say it's a uncle, cousin, whatever. And some of you may remember that my issue with through lines was that I had an uncle that put his DNA on there twice. Well, LS and L Lonnie are the same person. And they have them as my father and grandfather. But when you go down to some of these others, you run into, you can, when you've identified who they are, you can take down the list. Okay.
You just skipped over that one note that said, "He's my uncle, not my father." That was quite a note there.
Yeah. Well, I'm hoping somebody up there will see it behind the scenes and get it. But when you're looking at a match, I've got these different categories to put them in when I identify them. So let's take an unviewed match, and we're going to look at a couple different unviewed matches if they come up. Why are you not? You're circling. Close family.
Would resetting your filters do anything to it?
There we go. Starting with Rebecca. So I starred a couple down here. You can see the blue dots. These are all unviewed matches. And if you notice, you've got with each match, you've got an estimate of where they fall. And so far I have gotten all of my unviewed matches are 4th to 6th cousins estimated. Now, one thing I know is that when we get and look at DNA Painter, some of these estimates of where the relationship falls is going to vary with whatever company you're in. Okay. And if you go into the help, it's going to show you what Ancestry believes the relationship is. And just because you have 37% chance that it's a 3rd cousin does not mean that it might not fall under a 4th cousin or a half 1st cousin. Okay, we're going to see that in the DNA Painter tool to get that a little bit better. Irish, Rebecca has no trees, and I've looked at her once, I think. So let me find another one that I started. But you've got, okay, let's go to an unlinked tree. Now this one, when you go in here, you can see he has a public tree. Okay, but if you go into the public tree, there's nothing. He has got Bennett, Dale, and Norvin. Okay, since he's a Spencer, that's probably the paternal side. First part of my theory, okay? First part of the question. And it normally brings up the tree a little bit differently. My computer crashed earlier and now it's kind of doing different things. You see ethnicity is here. Okay, let's go into ethnicity a minute. This is one you want to check into as well, because if you look, you have me and you have Dale. I'm 34% Scotland, which for some reason, since the last time, that has become my primary one. He's 17%. Okay, Okay, 24% Germanic, 23%, that's pretty close. 23% England, Northwestern Europe, 50%. Okay, 2% and 1%. So we overlap and are close in this area around here. So you know what this tells me on my theory is that that's still looking at my father's side, because my maternal side is mostly Eastern Europe. Okay, so we're looking at putting him on the paternal side. You go further down and you have the shared communities. And this is based on the trees that are in Ancestry. And what's nice about the shared communities is that it gives you an idea of where a lot of these matches are and the people that match with them. So it's showing that right here is a shared community. Now, this one really theoretically could be a maternal side as well, because I do have one line that comes down into Ohio, down through Indiana, and up to the northern tip. That's on the maternal side. Okay, so we're still looking, we're not quite sure yet. So then we want to go into, you look at the Eastern Kentucky community. And golly gee, that's definitely the paternal side right down there. Okay. There's always a chance it could be some on both sides. Then you go into shared matches. What I love about shared matches is sometimes at a glance you can tell if it's on the maternal side or paternal side. You start seeing ones you have already marked. If you mark them based on the grandparents that you've seen. So you can see the blue is my Spencer Hobbs line. Blue Spencer Hobbs line, but also, well, I reviewed that one. This one comes out as the Jet Crawford line, still on the paternal side. This one's the Jet Crawford line. This one is Spencer Hobbs. Mostly on the Spencer Hobbs line. What is kind of interesting though is that I now have even more of an idea. So if I go into the highest centimorgan matches, the closest ones, second to third cousins, there's a common ancestor. I can pull that up, Joseph and Elizabeth Spencer. That's the paternal side, so I can identify it as that. Now this one is one of the rare ones. Normally, Ancestry highlights the surnames that you have in your tree that overlap with the other tree. I've got Spencer and Deaton. Both of those names are my tree. None of these others are. Okay, so I need to work with Armstrong and Isabel to work down and branch out their trees, because that's the shared grandparents that we have. And I want to take those people down to as current as I can get them. Okay, does that make sense? I want to look up at their kids, look at their kids, and you're going to branch it out. You're going to make that tree more bushy, because you're going to get it down to as close as you can into the private area. Okay. Now we don't know who's in the private area. However, if you click on it, you can still get some more names drawn down. And this is the Sean Combs family. So that can narrow it down. And we also have Combs in the line, but Joseph Spencer D.N.A, Armstrong, Elizabeth Spencer, you get it down. And all of these are private. But there's other ways to work with it, because, okay, his is private. But if we go into another shared match that might not be so private, but might be down there with them, that has a public tree like Valerie Hobbs. Come on. Come on. 3 years later, we're looking at the tree. Now, this is an example of, here's the Hobbs, which Hobbs married a Spencer. So I've got these surnames available, and I've got it up, and I've got Deborah Bowman and James Spencer, Aaron Hobbs, and look down here. Here's another. Remember the endogamy and pedigree collapse? Right here, we're looking at different lines going back of the same people. So it's going to be a little bit harder to narrow this down. But this common ancestor is William Zion and Mary Hobbs. So I want to make sure that I take these lines down to locate as far as I can current with these. And what do you do when you get down here to these private ones? Even though they're private, we pretty well aren't private when it comes to the internet. There are various ways of discovering exactly who people are, and you can come close. Sometimes you can go in and they may have give you a sibling that you've got fairly current information on, 1930 to 1995. There's somebody you can search. Now, you may not find as many birth records or death records in a sense. You might find more death records, but definitely marriage records. They kind of aren't as secret as some of the other records are. So you can get online and you can Google search and you start looking for the descendants of these people. You get on Find a Grave and they'll list family members. You get into, like I found in some of them that moved to Indiana, some of their birth records, divorce records. You get on obituaries. You start looking for these people that, died in the 1966. Look for their obituary. That's going to give you family members. And oftentimes you're going to be able to work your way right down to this private person in a sense. Okay. And that's going to give you an idea of where that line goes. And then if you wanted to contact them, you could. But as you work through, you're going to take one at a time and try to take their tree if they have it. Now, if they do not have it, they do not have a tree, you're going to take the ones that have trees. Oops, sorry. I feel like I'm talking really fast. Am I talking too fast for y'all?
Nope.
Too slow? Any questions while I'm getting back to examples here?
I was just going to say, it's amazing what you can find through Google these days.
Yes, it is.
There are no secrets anymore.
But if you can work your way down to identify the different ones, this one has no trees, Phyllis. She's technically possibly a second to third cousin. So where should she fit in the tree? Would you think? Don't know. Well, this gives you a little bit of a clue
Second to third.
on this. Okay. I don't know. Let me see here. I'm trying something real quick. Okay, on DNA Painter, which is one of the tools that you have. Okay, this is a shared centimorgan tool. Okay. If I put in what you have, 105 centimorgans. If I put that in up here, is my screen bleeping like it's looking like me, like it's bleeping?
Yes.
Your it's
The
your
picture.
it's your video is, but I mean the screen, we're still seeing the screen clear.
Okay, good. Okay,
Screen's fine.
okay. Oops. 105. Okay, now see how this is 40% half cousin, second cousin once removed, half first cousin twice removed. Back here, this is 51% second cousin, one time removed, half second cousin. It's not the same. Okay, but either way, it's going to give you a general idea of the potential of where they're going to fall. So you could use ancestries for that, or you could, use DNA painter, but those are just clues of the relationship. You really have to get in to build the tree. Now I'm echoing on myself. Okay.
Sound is good here.
Okay, good. So I wish I could find the one I'd starred.
While you're paused a second, can I ask a question?
Yes,
How
anytime.
do you go about these people that have no trees? I know that's what you're working toward, is finding where they might fit in your tree.
Right. You have to,
Is it best to use the Centimorgan chart? Is that the easiest way, or is there another way?
I think the easiest way is to try to build a
Build a tree on that person?
yeah, a dummy tree. It's not, I didn't want to use the word dummy tree, but kind of a temporary tree, or not one that is, you want to document it well enough to know that you're on the right track. And then you can go back and fill in the blanks, but enough to kind of get a tree started.
Okay.
So if you got a name, if they give you the name of the person with whom the match is,
Mm-hmm.
then you've got a name that you can kind of put in and start pulling in. And what you're going to be doing is you're going to say, okay, this person is like a third cousin, possible third cousin. So you would share, which grandparent would you share? If it's a third cousin, let's take that out of there.
Maybe a great grandparent, if it's a third cousin.
Well, it's high. You want to go as far back as you can. Third
Yeah.
grade, third cousin, you share great grandparents, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you want to look at all your great grandparents and you want to take those lines down. Now, if you've got it narrowed down to a maternal side or paternal side, that cuts in half the trees you're going to have to fill in.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah, we got
so
that.
you take that tree and you build it down, and then you take their name, what information you can gather on them, and you try putting their name in obituaries, obituary search or whatever. If you got a location, you try to glean whatever you can from that person. If you look at, let's see, say Steve Combs, sometimes if you go to their site, they might give you an email address or he was last in January, second, third cousins. He's got some of the other DNA information on there. You might find some clues on that. Okay. And you're going to start building, you're going to build down and you're going to build up. You can't see my hands moving because I'm frozen, so I can move all I want to. But you're going to roller coaster your research. Okay. Focusing on that individual. So in preparing for this, the more you have your tree with your grandparents brought down to the present, the easier it's going to be to connect some of them. So if we went back and looked at my unviewed ones, some of you saw, let's see, this half cousin once removed has a public tree. Now we share grandparents, but she was my uncle's half uncle. Okay, so that's my dad's half brother. And not knowing her name and stuff, you go in and you put in the names and then you start making connections with them. And then if that one is not working as well, you go through the shared matches and you start working your way down till you get a little further. And some of them you're going to run into. Michael Poles, I'm still not quite sure of. He doesn't have a tree, but I've been able to link it enough to know that he's one of Charles's children. So he's a half one when I get the exact one, but I don't know if he's a half first cousin or half second cousin yet because he has no tree. So I would probably need to contact him or contact Sherry, who we just looked at, who was I do know that she's my first half cousin, half first cousin.
Excuse me, I have a quick question. If they don't have a tree on Ancestry, might they have their tree on MyHeritage, for example?
Yes. Yes. And if they don't have a tree at all, then you can create a dummy tree. I have created a few trees that I work with, and you can make them private. When you create a tree, you can go in and the tree settings, you go down to tree settings. Well, that's hint preferences. Where is it? Public profile. Mine's a public profile, but you can change your profile and you can change the privacy. You can go into privacy and say only you or somebody else. And there's also the you're going to be supportive. That's nice of you. You can make it private and searchable, or you can make it private and not searchable. And it tells you what to do to click on that. Okay. I tend to use it private and not searchable because I'm using it knowing that there may be errors in it, and that what I'm using it for is to help me make that connection with that match. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And then-
So this is probably what I should do as I'm researching my newly found biological father's family.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. You want to go in, you want to get that started, because you don't know when you're searching the match, like she just said, you don't know how the other family is going to feel if you come across some unknown family secrets revealed.
Right.
So if you keep it private and unsearchable, then nobody's going to be able to find that tree.
Got it.
Okay. Now, if you want it out there and you know the people and it's your tree or whatever, of course, some of it, you know, for DNA and stuff, they say keep it public if you can, for that reason, so that others can match with you. Because you've seen on some of the matches, they have trees, but they're private trees. So you got private tree. But all is not lost. Look at all your clues. Who is the common ancestor? Well, if it's my grandfather and grandmother, then I can start working them down, and I might come up with Julie. Now, Julie may be handling the tree for someone else, but it could be the right family. And if she's handling more than one tree, then you might see that pop up in the shared matches and stuff as well. Now, we did take now, I knew this was my first cousin once removed because she looks exactly like her mother. So I knew that beforehand. But, you know, some of these have no trees, but I know it's the maternal side. And when I get to working on them, I can go in and say, this is a fairly close relationship. So we should share either, what do we say? Second cousin is great grandparents or great great grandparents. So I want to take the one furthest back and bring it down forward. Okay. And you're going to run into some of those people. And then you will find oftentimes that some of these people are already related to each other because they've had people do their DNA. So then you can plug in 2 or 3 people as far as their relationship goes. Is that making sense? Any questions?
I have a simple question. I've never really put my family tree on Ancestry, although I am on the family tree with a cousin on MyHeritage. I have hundreds, if not thousands, of names on my family tree. How do you enter them? if you were to do that? And what are the pros and cons of entering your family tree?
Okay, if you're wanting to, like on Ancestry,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, if you're going to do it on Ancestry, and it's just going to be a DNA tree, I would just go the first 4, 5, 6 generations. I would just work with those because autosomal DNA, that's what it's going to do. If you find something where you get a smaller section and it looks like you might be able to take it further back than that, then maybe go back the next generation. But for that purpose, because you want to bush the tree out, okay, you want to start with each of the grandparents that you're going to have, and you're going to bush the tree out as far as researching all their kids, their kids, the grandkids, great grandkids, cousins, all that stuff as you're working with the DNA. So you don't really need to go further back than I'd say the 6th generation, if that. I mean, you could even just work your way up to the 5th generation, depending on where your cousins fall and how deep you want to get into making the DNA connections.
But you have to enter each. You have to enter each name. You have to go through all that stuff.
I think you can upload a GEDCOM from the.
If you have Family Tree Maker, it's easy, but I think you can do it from any of the others too, can't you?
Yeah, I think you can.
You can set up your own GEDCOM file with however many generations you want, and just upload it. You can start with 3 or 4.
Yeah, because I've done that on some of the other companies just to have a starting place.
Right.
How do you do a GEDCOM file? You're talking to a guy that doesn't know much about this.
Do you have a genealogy program? If you do, it will be in one of the. It should be under export or something like that. I'm not familiar with Roots. I've used Family Tree Maker for years. You can export as a GEDCOM, and you can set up the number of generations you want to include. And I think
I had Roots
I'm not exactly sure, but maybe Linda can answer. I think Ancestry automatically lists them as private if there's not a death date. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So
if they're assumed to be still living, then it marks them private.
So to answer a little bit about the GEDCOM, remember when you had when we said that all the companies that you test with DNA, you can download your raw DNA results. The GEDCOM is essentially kind of your raw genealogy or your paper trail results that you feed into the family tree software of your choice. So if software you are building usually on your PC, now granted Ancestry, Linda, you guys can tell me, can you download your GEDCOM? I mean, can you download the GEDCOM version of what you feed into Ancestry?
I believe so.
I think so.
I think so. Let me see.
But all the other ones that live on your PC, like Legacy and Family Tree DNA or Family Tree, any of those family or Root.
Yeah, right here. You can upload a GEDCOM file.
Can you download though your version of your tree?
Yes.
Okay. So it's essentially like a raw coded tree, just like the raw coded DNA results.
Right.
And that way you can take that raw one and you can feed it into other companies if you wanted to. You can upload it into Ancestry if you wanted to. And that way you don't have to rebuild it from scratch each time.
Right.
Yeah. So I think
I have another question along that line. You were mentioning making
right
your
here.
tree
Export.
Yeah.
GEDCOM file.
Making your tree private but searchable. What is the exact access when it's searchable? Do they have to have a name to search? And when you search that name, do you come up with the whole tree or just that person?
When you're okay, give me a little bit more information.
Okay, my trees, the ones I have there now, are marked strictly private.
Okay.
If I wanted to make one of them private but searchable, what would another person see on my tree? What information would they access?
They would say, see, okay, right here. Let's go back to the private linked tree. This is what you're going to see. Nothing. Okay. Contact Julie. Okay. But you can also search the leaves and stuff will search documents and everything, and the document may be linked to a private tree.
Okay.
And that's where it's searchable per se, to where if they don't mark it unsearchable, you're going to get photographs or whatever on a private tree, and it's going to say contact so-and-so to look at the tree.
Okay.
So if you do make it private and unsearchable, they shouldn't even be able to see those photos or documents.
Ah, okay. So that's different.
Unless it's a generic census record or something like that, and then it'll pop up anyhow.
Okay.
Okay. So is that making sense to everybody?
Yes,
help you
I
out?
I was not certain about the private, but searchable, exactly how that worked. I didn't even know that was an option. So that's good. Glad to know that.
That is a well-kept secret, even though it's not a secret in a sense, but it down and dirty trees, that's what I wanted to call them, not dummy trees, but down and dirty trees. That's for your own use.
Yes.
And when I do the trees and stuff, and this is one of the things that I tend to use Ancestry quite a bit. I'm using my own thing here. I do use the tags that you can tag. I use the notes. If you contact somebody else, or you want to make a comment on somebody else's tree, you can do that as well. Okay. But I do like to, and I like to know the relationships and stuff as I pull people up. And there was a discussion on one of the Facebook pages about using caps and all caps. I use capital letters for the direct line, because that way I know who my direct line is at a glance.
Ah, good idea.
On that. Now, some people were like, no, they don't like it. They don't like the looks of it and stuff, but I prefer it because that way I can, when I'm looking at my cousins and I'm looking down at all these people and I lose myself, I can look for I know the last name is there, and then I know, because I have a tendency, I'm discovering that my German line is about as bad as my Eastern Kentucky line. it's got multiple cousins that are first, second, and third cousins among themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So it just kind of spreads out all over the place.
And one other question: when you download from Roots for me to a GEDCOM, does that include just the names and the birth dates, or does that include burial? Every piece of information you have in there, little anecdotes and everything else?
I think they were trying to work on something to get more of the media and stuff with it, but it's mainly the vitals, the statistics as far as birth, death, marriage, that kind of stuff, locations and stuff. But if it's pictures or, other things like that, you might not have it. But on the flip side, if you're going to upload it to Ancestry, within a minute, you're going to have a lot of leaves. So
Yeah.
you might find some information that you didn't have before, and you might find new information.
Why would that be?
Because of what information is available on the tree and what other people have added to the tree that have made them public. Like this picture of Margaret, she is the one I discovered as my grandfather's half-sister through DNA. And it was, no, she's not the one, but the brown is. But this picture I got from another family member online on a cousin that had more pictures than we did. But Christina, who I was at a minute ago, Christina was the one was the only child of Gottfried and Julie. Because Julie died shortly after, Gottfried remarried, so she had some half siblings, but she was the only product of those two people. And we finally broke through and found Julie over in Germany, which we hadn't been able to find, and come to find out These guys are like first or second cousins.
Mhm.
They're into this stamp. So I'm into the German records on these people. And I've got some, it's interesting because I'm getting DNA matches from other cousins who are making the connections and supporting what's being found. But utilize the notes and stuff so that you can go back real quick and see what, and once you've identified first cousin, once removed, second cousin. Now that's kind of a funny comment, isn't it? You want to see why that? Well, that one won't work. Let me find another one that's, the problem with this one is I'm not done yet investigating it, but this is an example of exaggerated centimorgans in a sense, because I am on one line, first cousin once removed, but also related to this person as a second cousin because of the pedigree collapse. And Ancestry does not, unfortunately, identify that yet. You know, they give you one or the other, but they don't give you both. Like if I bring her up, let me bring Sherry up on my tree. Notice, Sherry, how she spells her name? See, Sherry comes up as living. But now Sherry is a half cousin, so where'd you go? D.I.G right there. Paternal first cousin. Now that's showing that, but as we get up higher and stuff, that paternal grandfather, let's get a little higher. And great grand aunt, it's not necessarily going to show it on that tree, but sometimes you'll notice as you get to working with the matches that you are related to the person in more than one way, but that's not going to show on the relationship. It's just going to choose. I'm not even sure how they choose which one they're going to show. So that's why I use the notes. I wanted to get a good example of a really good pedigree collapse. See if this one is. Yeah, that's Spencer and Hobbs. So that one goes pretty good. Well, let me, wait a minute. I know what I'm going to do. Let's try the Jets. And see, you can bring up a particular group when you get these. And these identify the people in the group. And you can also scroll down to see if some of them you don't have identified yet, you could work with them to see. This is a public tree. Yeah, this one, you see Miller over here. That's a name, family name. And over here, you've got Holland, another line, family name. So I have to determine which relationship I am to from Archibald and Margaret through Nancy Holland or Rebecca Holland or somewhere in between. Brian's also another one that may not be showing up further back. Archie's the one who had his own funeral 10 years before he died.
That sounds like a good idea.
He did. He wanted to see what everybody thought of him. And he had a preacher there. And I mean, it was fire and brimstone preacher who was another ancestor. And they just had a holy rolling time there. And he gave him each, he had his coffin built under his bed, full of corn and gave them each some corn so that they could think about him when they planted it after he died. But anyway, you learn stories too from some of the others that you don't know as you get through these. Through lines is a nice tool, but be very, very cautious with it, even with the DNA, because you don't know what there, especially the further back you go, you don't know where the information is coming from.
Yeah.
On so yeah, one of them is DNA match, which I've got that from the last trip down. I'm trying to think of what else I want to share with you on some of this. But each of the companies is going to have their own tools. MyHeritage has got some really good tools. I've not played with them a whole lot yet, but utilize them. Some of the other tools, and we've already taken a brief look at DNA Painter. If you want to go in and use the segment route, I would encourage you, if you haven't already used the other building the trees up and down first, I tried getting comfortable with that first. Then with the segment route, you can make your own chromosome map with DNA Painter. They give you one free one that you can do. And here's just a sample. Now, this is what are the odds on DNA Painter. And basically what are the odds does is if you've got a hypothesis of trying to figure out where that person fits in, as in, is that person a first cousin once removed, or is that person related through whatever theory you've got, you can plug in the information and put that person in different positions to see which is the strongest hypothesis. There's a learning curve to it, and I've not done much with it because they said if you've got a pedigree collapse, it's not going to work very well for you. So that one's kind of went in my mind and out of it for that reason, because now it's on both sides. They've got the shared CN tool, which we've looked at. And if you're like me, putting in an example of my actual family members that fall into these categories is a help, because it gets it straight in my mind what the first cousin once removed is without having to go through the entire picturing it all in my head. But this is a good way to kind of see what the options were, because whatever you put in, it's going to tell you if you only have 78 centimorgans. This is the options you have. And this is where the options are going to come from. So if I have identified people in my tree already in these categories, I kind of know who I'm looking for. And it tells you what grandparents they may or may not share as far as it can go. This one's not really, kind of throwing it out there a little bit more. It's a little lower. So it's a little further back. The less centimorgans, typically the further back it is. So identify your first, second, and what third cousins you can first. Work those families down, and that'll keep you busy for a month or two. Then expand that, look at the matches, look at their ethnicity, look at the shared centimorgan amounts, where they might possibly fit in, and work their tree, build their tree if they don't have one. Start it out. Try to find them in an obituary, Google their email address, because sometimes that comes up. You might find them on Facebook. And if they don't want to contact, you might have to put that one off, but work with another match, work with another shared match, because that will help you put that in together and solidify what you're trying to prove as you're working your way through it. Now let's see what else is. Oh, it's got some new ones, inferred segment generator. I've not played with that yet. Cluster thing. Let's see, where is he? Oh. Okay, and this will tell you how to map your segments. You don't want to use, yourself is going to be the blank screen. Let me see where it goes. They've kind of, now that's working with the clusters. We want to go into chromosome mapping. There we go. Okay. You actually start out with a blank screen on this. This is all of the chromosomes.
Are we mapping your dog today?
Yeah, I was going to use that as a sample one.
You named it Melody. I was like, uh-oh. You know, you can get your dog's DNA tested, by the way. That is a thing.
Yeah. But what it's going to do is, technically, this is you when you start out. The top line is going to be paternal. The bottom line is going to be maternal. Okay, so let's go back to, I don't have very many segments done, but I've got a few. You can go in then and you can take, and it walks you through it. Read the instructions. It's real simple to add a segment coordinates to the painter. Then you add them, you identify who it is, the match, the centimorgans, the start and stop, and that's going to show you where Julia and I match. And it's on the maternal side, if you know that. If you don't know it, it'll kind of cover both until you can figure it out. But you're going to have to tell it, because it is not going to automatically know if it's maternal or paternal. Okay? And that's with any segment you've got. Any of them that have identified the segments that tell you you have them don't know if it's maternal or paternal. They haven't figured out how to separate that yet, because some of this, theoretically, I could bring up something that it comes up on both lines, especially if the parents are related further back. It might show up as both maternal and paternal. So if I did some of my grandparents on my father's side, or even mother's side, it could show up as the opposite. Okay. And then when you get, and you want to use like second and third cousins for this as well, that you know where they're related. Once you've identified where that match is, then you can create a color form and possibly a set of grandparents or whatever, add them on. And then when you come up with a match, if you want to look at a particular chromosome, then you can just pull that up and say, put it in there. And it has kind of a paint a new match. This is where you would add this, and all you have to do is copy and paste. It's been a while since I've done it, but the YouTube video and the video here are great, because you just can go over it, and whatever you copy on that page, you can copy the entire page, paste it, it's going to pull out what it needs. It's that intuitive. And it can give you a sample, and you can overlay that on the line. And if it falls in and kind of overlaps here, then you know you have a connection. Okay, this gets a little deeper into it, and I'm kind of covering it a little fast and a little sparse, because I don't want to get you confused. I want to emphasize the first steps of building those trees up and down and getting, you know, that paper trail identified as well. But these are something really worth playing with and come in handy when you really want to dig into it. There is, he mentioned it in the very last, before we're going to spend probably the rest of the time on GEDmatch, so I want to cover a couple of these others first. No, that's genogram. Yeah. Okay, this Genomate, if you're really concerned about privacy and you want to work with the matches and you want to be able to paint them and really get into it, this is a little complicated. It's not even bring. I wanted to bring up a. I don't want to download it. I want to just bring up. It's a program that you can install on your computer. You can upload your matches from 23andMe, all of them except Ancestry. Ancestry has decided they don't want you to. And that way, just like GEDmatch, you could take the other companies, put them into this one program, and that way you've got all the matches. And it will help you because it's downloaded on my computer at home. I was hoping the user guide would. Okay, let's see if it gives. Let me see. No, let's try.
On My Heritage, you can build your family
Whoa.
tree and make amazing discoveries about your family history really easily. Let me show you how.
Y'all getting that real loud?
Go to myheritage.com.
Phew. Okay, that was not what I wanted. But there you go. You've got a video there that you could do it. It comes up kind of like Family Tree Maker or Roots Magic or one of those kind of setup programs where you've got the data in there, but it allows you to paint it. It allows you to work with the matches. It, like I said, there's a big learning curve to it, and you can, but you can work on them via the segments, working on building the trees, that sort of thing. So it's an option that's out there. The book does give a few good options. GEDmatch, I've not really worked much with GEDmatch, even though I usually say it interchangeably. I mean, not GEDmatch, but the another GED something. GEDCOM, D.N.A. GEDCOM. I've not really fooled with that much, but I've heard people that have used it and like it. But let's go to GEDmatch. Do you guys have any other questions about, do you understand the need to kind of build the tree both up and down when you're working with matches and working with matches in common? And on some of them, it's going to be in common with or shared matches, that kind of thing. Those are going to be key to helping you plug the people in where they go. That's the old way. GEDmatch is simple as far as you don't have a lot of pictures and stuff like that on it, but it does have a whole lot to offer. And I would encourage you guys just to go ahead and play with it. Now, I think I did delete.
One thing to notice is those images there, the icon that says police, and
Yes.
it's X'd out. The law enforcement does use GEDmatch quite heavily to try to catch criminals. So, you know, depending on the folks, I believe as you upload your stuff to the first time, they immediately opt you out of that portion.
Yes.
And then that way you have the choice then to opt in if you would like to your DNA to be considered or, you know, part of that review.
And because of that, I would encourage you before you put anybody else's DNA up there that you check with them to see how they feel. If you're managing somebody else's DNA, just check with them to see how they feel. They may not care. They may want to opt in, which is fine. If not, they may not. Just out of caution, I just don't. But it is possibility. And here you can add other people's. I mean, the ones you manage, you handle. It does give you, when we first went in, there was, do you want a tour of it or whatever, some videos to watch. It tells you how to use GEDmatch. It tells you useful videos, education, upload your DNA files. This will walk you through uploading from whatever company it has, 23andMe, FTDNA, Ancestry DNA, and most others. It's going to walk you through downloading a GEDmatch onto your computer and then uploading that GEDCOM to the, GEDCOM to the GEDmatch. It has a lot of different things that you can try on it. Your basic free stuff is in the DNA applications, and this is free. Tier 1 gets a little bit more involved and has some kind of cool things with it, but just to get started, you can take anybody you've got over here, and I'm going to take myself. You can go into one-to-many, and this is going to how you want to use your thing. Put in your kit number that I just copied, search, remind me later, and it's going to bring up all your matches. Now, notice you get emails on this. So if you're going to build a quick and dirty tree on Ancestry, you might get an email on here that might help you out. Although if it's Sap or Papaw, it might not. I'm still not sure who he is, but it's got a name. So you could, sometimes you could glean more information. It may be an alias or it may be the actual name. If it's an alias, there's going to be an asterisk by it. Okay? Even if the alias is initials or something like that. It's going to give you the kit number. The first letter of the kit number tells you where it came from, whether it was family tree DNA, 23andMe, and some of the newer ones have got like the double letters and stuff, but it will explain that to you. And there's Mr. Cox, and he's Riley. Email. Yes.
I have a question. Linda, if I went on this and I put mine on it, it connects me with all these people that they know are related to me, or how do those other people get on this program?
Everybody who is uploaded to GEDmatch, you're going to be compared to.
Oh.
So if they've uploaded to GEDmatch, you will get that match.
Oh.
But if they've not uploaded, you're not going to get it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're still dealing with each company and those matches, but you're going to get some people that just upload from 23andMe, and maybe you didn't test at 23andMe, but because they did and they match, they're going to pop up as a match. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
In the book, it said that in 2015, so we're already 6 years later, GEDmatch reported it had over 130,000 registered users and over 200,000 samples in the database. So that's in the book. I would imagine in 6 years it has increased. However, in that time frame, then you also had the little kerfluffle where they were automatically opting people into the police, into the view where police or law enforcement could look at your results and everything, or use you in matches. And because they automatically opted you in, it created a little scandal. So there were a lot of people maybe that left and took out their stuff. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. A lot of us really like it. I mean,
yeah,
I can't imagine that it went down much.
I think there was a downslide, and there are still some people who will not use it. But if you really think about the concept of even the police using it, they're looking at your DNA, they're getting clues about your shared matches, they're following up, they're doing what we talked about with Ancestry as far as building the trees down and up. they cannot use your DNA to charge the person. If they find the person who is guilty or they suspect of being guilty, they can't use this to do it. They still have to obtain DNA from that individual. And they would still have to get that DNA and compare it to the crime that they've got the DNA with. Okay. So it's kind of a mixed thing. You've got CC Moore does a whole lot of work with the matches in that regard. And we attended a session where she kind of went through the process of it and everything. And she works with it extensively, but there is no chain of evidence in the process to where they can use your DNA and say, well, I got this from Linda type thing. Okay. So it's all in how you feel or how the other person feels. Some people do not want their stuff online at all. Absolutely not. And that's fine. That's their choice. But it does have a lot of perks to it. It tells you how old, how many days you've been on GEDmatch, and I've been on there a few days. Breaks down the type, the haplogroup, if it's known, if that's been input. And this is the furthest line I got back and helped us break through the wall on Julia to make that direct with, we did the mtDNA with this individual, and that kind of helped. Because it wouldn't help me to do the mtDNA because my haplogroup is K2B1. So I had to get Julia's haplogroup, which was this cousin was the one who was able to get that. Gives you total CMs, the largest. And this is where you can, use this data too as well on some of the programs if you're uploading your, doing DNA painter to map your chromosomes. The total number of centimorgans, largest, kind of where it came from, migration from family tree. Pink is the newer ones, matches that pop up. So if you go in there, and I think it lasts about 10 days before it'll start fading out and become white again. So if you're kind of keeping track and you want to say, oh, I need to check this match from 23andMe from Sean Combs, it's a new one. You kind of have a visual there, kind of like the unviewed in Ancestry. So you can play with these. You can check the ones that you want to compare and look at. Now I've not played much with this spreadsheet setup that they have, but that's one way to look at it. If you've got two kits that you say, I really want a closer look at how these two compare, you can do the one-to-many or the one-to-autosomal DNA comparison, where you compare kit 1 and kit 2. And then you can look at the graphics and the positions. So if I one thing I have issues with is remembering the numbers. Let's see. Whoops. Let's go to this one. Like I said, you guys swore that you don't know these people. Heck on it.
One thing for sure, we won't remember them.
That's true.
Don't navigate. You don't have the. I was gonna say you probably don't have to navigate away because that one was probably captured in your.
Yeah, that's true.
So the first one should have worked if you can go back.
Yeah, but I can't remember.
Okay. Yeah.
There we go.
And then do paste, and it should get in.
There we go.
There we go.
All right, you can look at position and graphics. You can adjust the SNP window threshold. You can do the minimum must be at least 3 centimorgans, and that tells you that that's how low it's going. So you want to be careful for false positives and stuff. The size of it, you can leave blank, different ways you can compare them. And then just compare. And it can bring up full matches, half match, means on one side or the other. base pairs with no matches, validity of segments, significant, whatever. And the information on YouTube will give you detailed information about what some of these mean. But it does give you a view of the starting point, the ending point, the total number of centimorgans or SNPs, and how your chromosome looks on this one. Mine tends to be the red and yellow, full match or base pairs on there. And this is, let's see, the green. Where do we match? There's a little bit of green, a little bit of green. He's my first cousin, so we match quite a bit, but you kind of get a visual of where you match. So that one you can kind of play around with, and you can do the position only, where it gives you just the stats. And this is kind of what you would put into DNA Painter for the chromosome mapping. You can do the graphic only, where it shows each one, where it falls. And only chromosome match segments. And these are only the ones that you really match on, which, considering we're first cousins, that's quite a few. Let's see, 21 we don't match at all. 3 we don't match at all. So we match on quite a few. So that's another area. 1 to X. You know, when you want to try to figure out and you're looking on the X, and I think that was on also the 1 to many gives you the X thing. So you kind of know who has X matches, and you can make the same sort of comparison there. I'm going to let Sherry do the admixture because it is your ethnicity, and she loves that. So, and one more thing before she catches over that. I do belong to tier 1. And so I wanted to get an example of 1 to many. It's the same sort of spreadsheet type thing, a little bit different. It's in beta. The segment search, you can search for particular segments. Phasing is, each of them will give you definitions. Triangulation will kind of triangulate some of the matches. You can look for your evil twin, which would be the person whose DNA you do not share. And I think I did that for, that's my son. And for me, so I was getting different ones there. And those kind of came over with the others. But the segment search, I think, is the one that I did. Oh, did it not?
While you're doing that, I think Michael raised his hand. Michael had a question.
Yes, Michael.
Yeah. As you test with these different companies like Family Tree, Ancestry, 23andMe, when you're doing your ethnicity, the ones I've done, they come back different, sort of the same geographical area, but each percentage is different with each one. With the GEDCOM, let's say I uploaded my Ancestry DNA into GEDCOM, and it brings up the matches of everybody who's had been 23andMe, Family Tree, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And they all show up. And because these other, again, I'm Ancestry, and I find somebody with 23andMe, and it's got some data there for me to look at. Is it necessary, or would it show me anything more if I uploaded my Family Tree DNA results and my MyHeritage DNA results into the GEDCOM? What's that going to do for me? Or will it do nothing since I'm already getting results from all these other testing companies?
It's going to do it based on the algorithms that GEDmatch has set up. Now, GEDmatch does have different. GEDmatch is also kind of a research tool for those who are studying DNA and those who are looking for specific markers or specific groups of people, like Native American. And that's what Sherry's going to kind of go into, the different ones there. So depending on which one admixture you choose, it's going to bring up different parameters. And so it's going to give you a little bit of a different skew to things. And it will, it's interesting to see how that compares. It's almost like just doing it with a different company, that if you've done yours with 23andMe, with Ancestry and Family Tree, and they all come up with different ethnicity ranges, similar but still different, the same thing's going to happen with GEDmatch.
Okay.
But you can also put it into specific study groups. So there's a study group for like African American. You can have them run that algorithm with your DNA and show you what the results are. Okay, and Sherry's going to cover that. I lost the matching segment thing that I had done run, so it's going to take a little while to run. So Sherry, if you want to go ahead, I'll remind me and I'll show that when we get back there. Any other questions on some of this? Hopefully it's making some sense. I am very bad for having multiple windows open and it don't work too well in GEDmatch.
Huh. Okay. Do you see where it says welcome me? It's GEDmatch. Is that what you guys see?
I see it, yes.
Okay, great. So this is after I log in with that newer version of GEDmatch. And so then I'm flipping over. This is what, and you've seen Linda do this already. You now see this is what the old version of GEDmatch looks like. And you can literally sign into either one of those, you know, whichever look that you prefer. And so I'm going to go back to the new one. Here's one fun thing I think that's cute. If you are brave enough to click on, are your parents related? That's always a fun thing to do. And for me, I've got my kit is the one that I have saved in here. And so you get this really fun, weird looking thing. And then, oh, look, no segments found. It indicates your parents are probably not related within recent generations. And I love, though, if you do run this and it says your parents are related, there's an entire blog post on when the DNA says your parents are related. So it's almost like a little mini therapy there, just in case that's what your results come up with. And I'm going to go back. Okay, so we're talking about the admixtures. I'm going to go into the admixture heritage. And again, that looks the same on either side. It's going to be admixture heritage, whichever version that you decide to do. And you can even you can play with admixture oracle with population search. That just refers to some of the tools that they're using in this DNA analysis. I don't think I like this version. Well, no, wait, it's okay. All right. It panicked me for a minute. I'm used to the older version, honestly. So I'm just going to pick one of these. So what these are different projects of DNA study. So when you get your main results from all the big companies, Ancestry, Family Tree, you know, you get this lump of ethnicity, and, you know, they're pretty strong percentages. And, you know, if you're curious to see whether you match with anything else, you know, maybe in the smaller segments, and before we leave, I'll let Linda talk a little bit about what false positives, how we have to, you know, think about that. Have that concept in your mind when you are going through something like this, because, yep, it will pull out really tiny things for you. But keep that in mind as well, though. What is all this? But okay, this one's a link to Oracle. All of these different things I would play with. So you see how the drop down, you've already got your kit in. All these different drop downs, these are different DNA projects. So if I click on any of these, there's still other choices here. So play with these however long you want to do that. Enter my kit. And then once I've entered my kit into this one I've selected, there's another drop down. So all these different parameters or algorithm setups that you have, take some time and go through all of these, because each one's going to give you a little bit different results. but they're kind of fun. I'm going to go with the very first one. If you want to enter your ethnicity, you can. I don't necessarily have to do that. Okay, now it's doing its thing, apparently. And I'm going to see, oh, there we go. Time elapsed 8.3. Look at that, 8.3 seconds. Okay, so this is what this looks like, but do you see how many more my list of percentages has really increased. That's not, you don't usually see, the main companies won't let you see these. So yeah, that's normal. I see that on all the major companies. North Atlantic, Baltic, that's pretty high for Baltic actually. I usually only test around 2% Baltic, depending on the algorithm in the other companies. Even West Asian is pretty high. Mediterranean, that's normal. I get that a lot. But these ones that are like right under the 1%, and again, and then Oceanian, Sub-Saharan, confirm my resubmission. I'm going to pick a different one. Now, one of the things too, you'll get a little description sometimes about what these tests are about or what these studies are trying to capture. So do a little exploration on those. There's one I know that is, studying African ancestry. And so it will tell you this is best for those with a 100% African ancestry. Well, that would shut out a lot of African Americans in our country if we were trying to, if those folks with that heritage were trying to, to put that into that study. But you know what? I have like a smidge. I have located. She's a 5th great grandmother who's a free woman of color. So I do have that. But if I had to rely on the DNA of all the other main companies, I would never see it. So this allows me to see it. But wow, look, see that 0.1%. Some of these studies will go way back in time. So if you've seen in some of the main companies when they're asking you, they're showing you whether you're hunter or gatherers or farmers or whatever, some of the studies are doing just that. There is, oops, let me go back. And there's one of these. Okay, yes, here's the African only. Now, here's the interesting thing. When I mentioned, I think in the last class, I said one of these tests, like I clicked on the Japanese, it told me I was 23% Japanese. Well, am I really 23% Japanese? No, not really. So it just means that I'm testing with people that have some of the same background, that it's, because the algorithms are so skewed with their study, that's what it's doing. But African only, this did help me get to see where my little smidge of Africa was matching. So I've got a lot of East Africa here. And that's, again, I'm not that high. My African is not that high. It's very tiny, but it at least helped me go down into where they were coming from. So North Africa, Ometic, this is on the western side. Hadza was on the western, and then East Africa. There was another one in here. I can't remember which one it was. Like I said, there's so many options. Run it so many times, you get some of these things. This is where I see Native American ancestry. You'll see some of that. In fact, depending on the test, it's a little bit higher than even the African. And I'm pretty sure I know where that comes from. But for those people who are, they've tested to a point where it's so far back and it, will drop off of the genetic family tree, sometimes you can see some remnants in some of these. But think about it. Even the small Native American and the African for me is 5th great grandmother. So, and even then she was of mixed heritage. She was not, she was not straight from Africa. She was mixed already. And the Native American, that was probably about 4th great grandmother. So again, things really still have fallen off the genetic tree. This is just kind of it's another layer that you can take a look at. And again, all these are different labs, different company studies that are doing this. These are not usually something you can just pay and be part of their study. A lot of these are probably universities and things like that are, they're letting you, they love this feed of your raw results that they can work with. So yeah, that's pretty much all I really needed to share with that. But like I said, there's so many different drop downs. Don't forget all about those little drop downs, and just play with them. They're fun. It's fun to see all these different little pieces that we normally don't get to see in the larger companies. And as to Michael's question about whether, if you tested in one company or two companies, should you upload both of them in here? I would try that. I've never done that before. My guess says that your raw DNA should be the same, no matter what company that it comes from. But that would be an interesting test, just to see what happens.
Yeah, the raw DNA is the same, but the algorithms are different. And I want to show you this one thing first, but remind me again, I'm going to show you, go back to my uncle that's on there twice on Ancestry. And you can see there is a little bit of difference even on Ancestry with the DNA, even though it should be the same, but that's based on the algorithms.
I have a question.
Yes.
My twin is here, and I do now have her DNA too. And it is pretty clear to us that our DNAs are different, or they did come out different. There's no question about, the centimorgans are different, all these little things. And what I was just going to do the painter and put them both in and see how we compare on the DNA painter. Is that, or because it'd just be fun to see where we compare and where we don't compare, but we are not exactly the same. We are not.
Right. That is cool. I mean, you might try it and see what it shows on there, because if you upload the start and stop, you might see where each one starts and stops on it. And all you would have to do is upload one of them.
Oh, okay.
Because the other one is going to be the baseline one.
Right. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yes. I understand.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
All right. What I ran was on tier 1, and that's just a little fee a month if you want to get really deep down into this. And this is a matching segment search. So this took all the people on there, all the matches, and this is taking chromosome 1, and this is where we matched on chromosome 1. And here's the second group that matched on chromosome 1. Third group, fourth group. One little person there with green. Where'd you come? You're a Crawford. Interesting. Same with the blue. But you can see the graph of where we actually match on chromosomes. You can narrow it down and you can choose just a few. But if you want to see exactly where you match on it, just by putting in a few and you've got the match here and you're working on the chromosomes, this tool can help you. I did the whole thing. So we'll backtrack a little bit. And you can go in and put segment size and do that adjustment. If you do your whole thing like that one, it takes, I had 995 comparisons there. So it takes a few minutes to do it, as you can see, but that is, another tool that you can use if you wanted to use the tier 1. And they're trying new things like find your most common recent ancestor. And that is kind of what I was referring to earlier on Ancestry. That's what you're looking for when you have a match. You want to find the most recent common ancestor and build your tree down from that. So whatever grandparents that includes, that's where you build your tree down from. Okay. Now, when you get it up to the grandparents, you don't necessarily know if it's the male or the female, the grandfather or the grandmother. That's why you kind of have to work both trees down. But that's your most recent one, so it's going to be descended from those two people. If you're going to start working with the centimorgans, remember that, and I think we talked about this before, the lower the centimorgans, the further back it is. And when you start to get below about 7 centimorgans, it's really, really questionable. It could be a false positive. It could be a glitch. It could be, technically there could be false negatives as well. But you really want to be careful with those, because just because you may show a 3 centimorgan match with somebody, doesn't necessarily mean it's a match. It could just be a false positive. So that's why you start with the higher ones. And the more you get comfortable with that and working with your tree, then the further back you can go. And some people, Blaine, I think, is getting back, I think he's gotten back to like 6 or 7 generations a bit with some of them in taking some of the smaller centimorgans. But you want to use that with caution. Okay, that is something really be careful with. And so when you're using like GEDmatch and stuff, you might just want to put in, where you have the option of, the segment search or any of these others, one to many or whatever. You might want to set the parameters to where you're looking at no centimorgan, like the segment search. You don't maybe say nothing under, leave blank for a default of 7. Say, I'd rather have nothing below, below 25 to fool with. Or, you're 75. I want to work with the small group to get started. I want to see, let me just take that small portion. Just reiterating, Sherry, try the different ones. Try the different things. The more I practice with something, the more comfortable I get with it and the better I understand it. And I could still screw it up, but they give you how-to videos on YouTube, and even, GEDmatch gives you some really good videos, and walk through them. If you partake of family tree webinars, go ahead and watch some of those videos. And family tree webinars, you can, I think it's about $49 a year now. But it gives you access to all of these videos, and they have a lot of DNA, but it'll also help you just in general genealogy research anyhow. There was something else I wanted to emphasize. Also, when you're, sometimes you can put a minimum or a maximum centimorgan size. And if you already know your first cousin, your brother, that kind of stuff, you can set the maximum, to not go that high on the situation to make it more controllable. And also what I missed on that one thing was you could download it onto a spreadsheet if you want, or something, if you want to look at it more closely and start working with those particular matches. So a lot of these do have downloadable options so that you can keep it on your computer and kind of work your way through matches. Anybody have any questions or anything? I've totally lost my image, haven't I? I've gone black, gray.
I have a question from
Yes.
last time.
Okay.
If I didn't want to interrupt, if anybody's got any questions from today, but I have one from the last time. You showed us how to, when we were looking at the locations where our DNA shows up, you showed us how to hone in on like a town or a region and, get very close to the local geographical location. I couldn't figure out how to do that. I thought you said it was on MyHeritage, but was it? Where was it? And how did you do that?
Yes, I would like to see it too. Can you give us a demonstration?
I think it was it My Family Tree DNA?
Maybe it was. I don't remember which site it was on. I was thinking it was MyHeritage, but I couldn't find it there. So that must have been wrong.
I think you had said it was MyHeritage, but I wasn't able to find it myself. But
I did find some on MyHeritage, I think. But I think Family Tree DNA was the better option for me. Let me do the other ones. One of these days, I'm going to have all these numbers memorized.
Good luck with that.
Yeah. I've got them taped to my computer, keyboard, desk, and stuff at home, but it doesn't help here. All right, let's go see here.
When you pulled up the world map that showed the areas where your DNA was found.
Yeah.
And then you honed in on a small town or a region or something. And I thought that was really interesting to do, and I haven't been able to do it.
No, that wasn't it, was it? Let's try MyHeritage.
Yeah, we don't want to know your passwords. Maybe
I wasn't showing them.
Can you connect through the library there? Or
Uh,
do you have that access?
let's see. I want to do the DNA ethnicity estimates. Ethnicity estimates. Oh, whoops.
There you go.
There, yeah, if I can move it up. Okay, so no, what one was it?
I don't know.
It wasn't Ancestry.
Well, I think this just means that Linda has homework for the next time.
Any other questions while I'm playing with this to figure it out?
You could always just email it to us when you figure it out.
Yeah,
That's
fair.
true. We got your emails.
Right.
All right. Yeah, I can.
That looked like a fun thing to do for me. There were several places I wanted to check out.
I think it made us all gasp when we saw
Uh-huh.
it. Like,
Yeah.
ooh, I want to see that.
Yeah, because it.
Right.
Well, I'll have to look for it again
Okay.
because it. I was thinking that it was Family Tree, but I know I'll look for it again and I will email you before the next time. How about that?
I would really, really appreciate that. Thanks.
Yeah, because that that's fun to have an idea of where, and I think it was focused on London, Scotland, and Wales.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it makes it kind of interesting.
Yeah, and I have one I think was Welsh. That's one reason I wanted to look at it.
Okay, and let's see. Next time around, we are looking at, is it the Y and the mtDNA? Let me see if I can find the. Any other questions while we're? I was looking for the
The curriculum.
Yeah, the curriculum.
Let me see.
I
can
had
pull
it.
that up.
I had it up earlier today, but like I said, my computer crashed this morning, which I thought lovely.
I've been having weird issues. And my ancestry has been like literally just dragging all week long, spinning out of control. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Okay, 2 or 3. Let's see. Yeah, next. Yes, Y-DNA, mtDNA, and X-DNA is the next session. Read chapters 5, 6, 7 with some videos.
And I want you all to pick out a match that you've not worked with yet and see what you can do with it. And actually put it into play so that when we come back again, you can say, I got stuck here, I got stuck there. And if time allows, we can possibly do a group think of suggestions on where to possibly look or what to look for or for some clues. Does that make sense? Will that work for everybody? Because
yes,
the goal is for all of us to be able to work with matches. And some of us, until we actually get started working in them, it sounds good. I can hear a lot of things that sound good. And I know I can do this when I get home. And then I go, oops, I'm stuck right here, right now. So go ahead and pick one out. And then next month, be ready to say, I made it this far. Okay.
Okay.
And at your own level, if you feel comfortable doing a second cousin, if you feel like you could do a third or fourth cousin, shoot, we can try it and see. More heads are better than one.
Should we pick one with a tree or without a tree? Without a tree would be much harder, I think.
Well, go ahead and try it and see. That's where you're kind of stuck. And for some of those who haven't really worked with trees that much, go ahead and do even partial trees. Because sometimes we pulled up some that only had, what, 4 or 5 people listed.
Yeah.
But if you could get down to those 4 or 5 people by taking those grandparents down, you've done it, didn't you? They might have liked the tree that you come up with too. Because they might not have made it that far. Any other comments, questions? Is this helpful any or?
Yes, very.
Yes, it's good to see the twins there. We
Mhm.
know you guys have different DNA. Isn't that something?
Are you identical?
Yes.
And your DNA is still that different? Oh, that is interesting.
Yeah, it's nice to kind of have proof, physical proof of it.
It's really interesting because we both thought we were in a study when we were like 14, and we have this chart thing that says at USC that we're identical twins, and then we get this, and it's like, it's not real weird off, but it's enough, 10 here, 5.
Yeah,
It's interesting.
yeah, it makes a difference. And now to figure out who inherited what from whom.
Yeah. Yeah. It's pretty interesting.
Okay.
But thank you. I'm learning a lot. Thank you, everyone. I'm not as senior as everyone here, but I'm trying.
Well, I've been out of it for 10 years. I'm just trying to get back into it. There's so much more out there now. I was doing it the old fashioned way in the 90s, but I've been out of it for actually longer. Yeah, more like almost 15 years now. I haven't done anything much, and I'm just trying to get back into it. I used to remember all the names, dates, and places. Now I can't even remember yesterday. So
Tell me about it.
yeah.
But we get so inundated with options and stuff that it's so hard to remember that you just break it down in one step at a time. Just pulling up your matches is very intimidating. But if you just start saying, okay, I'm going to break it down. I'm just going to take this match that is higher up, but the first person that I don't really know and I can't place, that's the match I'm going to start with. And
Sounds like fun. Yeah.
Okay.
So as a fun little thing before we leave, I'm going to send you, this is just breaking in the news. In fact, a couple of news places have reported this today, and it's talking about they're trying to study whether inanimate objects have consciousness. Well, that's, weird thing right there, right? But what they did discover is they said that mitochondrial DNA has a social structure and that it communicates. And I'm going, they just blew my mind. I have no idea. I'm going to give you guys a couple links in the chat just to show you. One of them is literally takes you to the journal that it's in, and you really can't, it's Science Direct. You won't have permission to really read it, but it will give you the overview where it says the social nature of mitochondria, implications for human health. And it's the sociality has deep evolutionary roots and underlies biological complexity. Mitochondria exhibit social behavior. Like, okay. Since we're getting into that next month, that could be really interesting. So anyway, that's just some fun little news, DNA in the news today.
Wow.
All right. Anything else? It's a little bit after 4. Are we done?
Yes. Thank you both very much.
Welcome. Y'all have a good month. Don't get too hot.
Yeah.
Or too wet.
Yeah.
Been wet.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank
We'll
you.
send out the video soon, and probably the next couple weeks. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.